Your Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's really an honor and my pleasure to have His Excellency Mr. Ashraf Salman, Minister of Investment of the Arab Republic of Egypt, with us. So thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today.
So I just want to give you a little bit of a background of Mr. Ashraf. When your announcement came out middle of last year in June, the whole investment committee, including the whole region, were ecstatic. We were very happy. And the reason is very simple, because Mr. Ashraf has a long history in the banking sector in Egypt. It requires more than 15 years, but what is important, that he is equally involved both in the public and the private sector. And the recent position was as the co-founder and the CEO of Cairo Financial Holding, and before that as a head of corporate finance and investment banking in Arab African International Bank. Mr. Ashraf has done more than 200 transactions, possibly worked in as many sectors as you can imagine, both from the lending as well as structuring perspective. So the understand the depth of the industry as well from both from macro and microeconomic, it's an amazing feat that we are gifted with too as your presence. So thank you. I mean, we're really glad to see you here. We have 15 minutes. We will have more in-depth discussion 15 minutes later. There will be a 45-minute discussion that will talk about the 5-year plan. But now we're just going to have, make it a very simple one-on-one discussion on the plan of Egypt. So with that in mind, my first question is geared towards the last year's, I shouldn't call it performance, but last year's announcements. So the last year, Your Excellency, in January, there was 4.3 gigawatt of renewable energy projects were announced. 110 companies were selected. Solar was oversubscribed by twice. And then in the March, we have Sharm el-Sheikh, we have a lot of investment announcement by both bilateral as well as multilateral agreement. And then in the following that, we have roughly about 9 gigawatt of the contract, the renewable energy contract between, I mean, we talked about Sky Power International, we have seen Aqua Power, we have seen Masdar for solar, Terra Solar, and Siemens. So that was 9. So there's a lot of activities. Just first, what is the progress that you've seen from the last, the announcement to today? How do you define it?
When we talk power generation, we have to look to the picture top-down approach. Let me, in a nutshell, go back to the 30th of June 2014. We had fundamental economic figures at that year, and we started the turnaround program of the Egyptian economy. We used to have very scary figures. We used to have 2% GDP growth. We used to have 13.7% unemployment rate. We used to have actually old infrastructure that needs improvement and renovation. Also, we used to have 12.2% budget deficit to GDP, while putting into consideration or normalizing the Gulf aid to Egypt in that tough year. Also, we used to have saving rates below 5%, investment rates below 14%. All that figures were really very scary at that time. But we started in a courageous way a reform program that started on June 30th, 2014. And very brief, in June 30th, 2015, we have achieved a lot of results that is encouraging the whole investment area in order to increase investment. I forgot also to say the FDI stood at the level of $3.54 billion at that year. We started the program by, for the first time in Egypt life, to touch subsidy to increase oil prices. We started to with structural adjustments of the fiscal consolidation of the Egyptian budget in order to narrow down the budget deficit to GDP. So we have reached, on the 30th of June 2015, a GDP growth of 4.2%, budget deficit to GDP dragged down to 11.5%, targeting to see the 10% figure next year, fiscal year. Inflation in the comfort zone of Central Bank of Egypt. Also, we have achieved FDI figure back to the normal before revolution, restored it to the level of $6.5 billion before revolution. All that was actually a proper housekeeping to turn around the economy and then to start looking into the infrastructure and renovate it and improve it. So we started in Sharm el-Sheikh specifically with the energy projects, focusing on power generation. The first infrastructure that should be done at that time in this area is deregulation, is to open the market for private sector in order to interfere, enter, and pour investment into this area. And with definitely a big focus and eye on renewable energies. We have resources in Egypt that cater for renewable energy. So we started with deregulation. We introduced the feed-in tariff program that you have just said that it was oversubscribed, specifically the solar power was oversubscribed at that time. And then we introduced also the BOO, which was at that time very important for the large-scale projects, as the feed-in tariff program was offered for the size from 0 to 20 mega and from 20 to 50 mega. So I think we have been seeing a lot of activities from March till now. We have been pushing. We have to admit that this is a learning curve. This is just a kickoff took place in March 2015 for the renewable energy. We started with the power purchase agreement. We started with the executive regulation of the new law of deregulation of the industry. We started to accept international players in the field. We started also to accept for the first time purchasing the electricity from investors whom they are playing as a private investor in the field. So the first feed-in tariff program was very generous, and everybody knows that it came to a level which is not found anywhere now as a first attraction for investor, which comes in the solar to a neighborhood of 14 cents per kilowatt hour, and in the wind differ from one area to other and differ from the wind speed to other. And then we started to offer another BOO program, which definitely will drag down the feed-in tariff pricing to new low levels. And I think we are moving with the program. We have some obstacles, how to make the power purchase agreement bankable in order to get financed properly with the international financial institutions. And also we're moving with this. We're consulting EBRD. We're consulting the private investors whom they are major player with the government in this thing.
Thank you very much. I think you have highlighted two key points that take away. One is you certainly mentioned the feed-in tariff, the generosity of the feed-in tariff, which is 14 cents. With all due respect, I think the level of feed-in tariff at that time, given the reserve that I think it has $16 billion, which is way less than 36 billion that Egypt had a very long time ago. And also the convertibility, which is a key issue. So I think from the industry perspective, what we represent, it's probably the just and right. Now, is there a change in heart? Because what we are worried about is that there is 2.3 gigawatt of solar, 2 gigawatt of wind. There is an announcement for the right reason, and I think it was handled very effectively. The question is, how do we, going forward, are we going to see those getting executed? Or you will see there will be a new sort of plan coming up? Because the confidence level is quite important in a market that we are present. What is your take on that? Do you really see going through some of those projects this year in 2016?
Let me also add, in March we introduced an investment guarantee package. The investment guarantee package was actually in line with the offer of the solar projects, the feed-in tariff. We offered the guarantee for repatriation in the investment law, and it is there, drafted in the new amendment of the investment law. Also, we offer the guarantee of contract disputes. We cannot actually reverse the contract with the investors, and this is one of the guarantees of the amendment of the investment law. And in addition to that, also we offer repatriation of not only the capital, but also dividend and liquidation results. So we are actually committed towards the feed-in tariff program. We are committed towards the pricing. We are committed also towards the FX risk, because investors are not taking FX risk. And we are committing to the availability in form of the investment guarantees that is drafted in the investment law.
Thank you very much. And I think this is one of the key issue that was pertaining to the industry, specifically the investment guaranteed as well as the convertibility. So once you have introduced that, I think it has to get penetrated to the local bank, which is very much taking directions from the capital market and general bank. So is there any change? Because in the decree, the local bank cannot really convert the currency. How do you address that, those details?
No, the matter was at that time availability. And I think once we started to restore back the level of FDI as before, and once we acted on our trade balance, and we started to have the regular flow of tourism and the regular flow of the balance of payment aspects, we will find this available like before before 2011.
Thank you. And I think that definitely is build a confidence in the project developer that is represented here. I think was eagerly ready to invest and get the feed-in tariff program going in Egypt. Just looking a bit ahead, we have seen two things. I mean, I've looked at in 2014, Egypt also announced the coal project, which was 8 gigawatt level, as well as there is a discovery of natural gas. And I've understood that in 2018, there is a possibility to have commercial production of that. How those will impact on the renewable energy mix that has already been announced and in the pipeline, if any?
We'll go back to the product mix, the strategy of the product mix, because this is very important. Actually, when we started to draft the first strategy for power generation, we identified that we really relied on 100% thermal energy for the past 50 years. And that was not very wise. Yes, it was at that time lower in investment cost and then solar, and lower in investment cost than wind. However, we started to introduce a product mix strategy that by 2020, we will be having 60% of our power generated through thermal energy, 20% through renewable energy, and other 20% through coal-fired plants.
So you will stick still to the coal-fired plant. Is it a necessity today?
I think when we look to advanced economies, China, Germany, everywhere, we will find that it still represents significant percentage of power generated over there.
Hope our developer can assist you to convert some of that to renewable, and that's what I hope as an industry. But I certainly understand that there has to be a mix, right mix, depending on the industry as a positioning. And I'm sure in the next 5 years, the industry will take in such a form that, as we have seen in Germany and others, they started with 10%, and they finally went up to 40, 50, and some islands, they go up to 100% today. So I hope that Egypt will take that view as well as we progress with time.
I think it goes back also to a sophisticated equation that calculates the levelized price for kilowatt hour. And this is very important in tackling the product mix.
No, thank you very much. So the last question, I mean, we have, and that's a $10 billion question. So 4.3 gigawatt, additional 9 gigawatt, and the 4.3 gigawatt, there is an estimate that from Bloomberg that you would need about $10 billion of investment over the next 4 years. How confident you are that this will go through, based on the situation today? 80%. So thank you very much. And if we get the 80% of 4 gigawatt, that's the record in the industry. So Your Excellency, I think we're out of the time, but thank you very much for giving us the light and the confidence and the renewed confidence and the way forward. Please give a big hand. Thank you.
Thank you.